Greetings everyone, I am the Night Chef, and today we've got a special video because it's Christmas time. And so I wish a Merry Christmas to everyone who celebrates it, a Happy Holidays to everyone who doesn't, and well, obviously some people would probably like to be more festive than they can be at the moment, so got some links in the description to try and help people there. But we've got a special guest on the programme today. The Night Chef's mum will be with us, and she will be preparing some absolutely lovely stuffing, a traditional part of a traditional Christmas dinner. So, let's get cooking! We enter on our epic adventure as Mummy is going to be cooking some stuffing for us for our Merry Christmas.
So what we're going to do is start with a couple of onions, which we're going to peel, and then we'll chop them into, doesn't really matter what size chunks, because we're actually going to boil them to soften them up before they go into the stuffing mix. So this is really a bit of a cheap stuffing because you could make it absolutely from scratch with breadcrumbs and herbs and things. But this is one where we're starting with a packet and just adding some things to make it a bit more tasty. So we slice, when we finish peeling them, we'll slice up and then chop these onions. And then I'm going to put them in a small amount of water. You'll see in a moment I've got the water ready in the pan. I'm going to put that on to boil and give the onions a bit of a cook, just to get them softened. So, there we are, 2 onions peeled.
And hope you don't mind me asking, but in case any viewers at home are wondering, are there any particular types of onions you should be using for this, or?
These are just ordinary cooking onions, but if you wanted to make it a bit different, you could use some red onions. And if you wanted to put a bit of colour in, you could chop in some spring onions or some chives, but they won't stay very green because of course they're going to be cooked. So I just use ordinary cooking onions, but you could substitute red onions. And I've chopped those up, not into very small pieces, and now I'm going to put them in the pan. So we'll put them in the pan and then we'll turn on the gas, cover them up and bring them to the boil, and that's going to take a minute or 2. So the onions have started to boil now. What I'm going to do is just turn them down to a simmer, put the lid back on and leave them for about 10 minutes or so until they've softened up a bit. So what we've done now is the onion is now softened, and what I'm going to do is just puree it because some people don't like these big chunky bits of onion. Now if you like chunky bits of onion in your stuffing, then chop it smaller before you cook it and don't puree it. I puree it down because then it's smoother. So I've tipped my cooked onion into this bowl and I've got a stick blender and I'm just going to puree it down. It does make a bit of a noise.
If someone doesn't have a blender, what would you use instead?
Well, what I would suggest if you don't have a blender is just chop your onion finely, cook it as I did, and then put it straight into the stuffing. Don't bother trying to blend it because if you haven't got a blender it's very difficult. But if you chop it small and cook it, it'll work just as well. Almost like onion soup. And what I'm going to do with that, I'm going to bring it over to my big mixing bowl. And in my big mixing bowl I've got 400 grams of ordinary sausage meat, and what I've done is added 100 mils of cold water just to make it a bit more sloppy, make it easier to work with. And now I'm going to add my onion mixture, and it's going to turn into a sloppy sludge. It doesn't look terribly appetising at this stage, but once it's got the stuffing mix added and it's all cooked, I promise you it will be delicious. So what I'm doing now is just mixing in the onion and the sausage meat. Then I've got some standard ordinary stuffing mix that you buy in a packet. I'm going to add that stuffing mix to the mixture in my bowl and then mix it all around. You can, if you want to, add additional herbs. So if you want to add a bit more sage or some thyme or anything really that you like, just to make it a bit more interesting. You can also add, if you want, some chopped dried fruit such as apricots or even prunes, or some dried cranberries or some fresh cranberries. Really, it's up to you what you like to put in. And then you mix it until you've got a well mixed concoction. And I have got a few little bits of onion still in there, but I'm not too worried about those because they'll cook nicely into the mix. And that's your stuffing. What do you do with it next? Well, you've got two choices. You can either make it into stuffing balls and bake them in the oven at 180 for about 30 minutes.
That's 180 centigrade.
That is, yes. Or you can put this into an oiled dish, oven-proof dish, and bake it in the oven and then just serve it in spoonfuls. If you're going to put it in a dish, I would say that you'll probably want to cook it at 180 Celsius for about 40 minutes, because in a dish it will be a bit more dense. And that's how I do stuffing.
And I'd just like to thank Mummy for her excellent cooking and showing us all manner of things in how to make our stuffing. So, thank you all for watching, and I wish you all a very good night, and it was lovely having you here.